I want to talk about cheating and reward and the sense of accomplishment. This originally started as a thought on what it means to use a cheat code in order to experience success in a game. And I immediately thought of when I was a kid, there was this, it had just started the wave of the manipulation of the education process in Canada such that it was becoming softer and more indoors and less, there was less of a struggle and it was less physical. And these things are entirely openly hostile to what it is to be a growing boy in that environment. And one of the things that happened is we would have like the outdoor activity thing and the entire school would go and participate. And I was a chubby kid, and I was not, no, I was not a physical person. Later in life, I'd become far more active, and I'd be in cycling and swimming and stuff like that. But I mean, at the time, I was like, I don't know, 8, who knows? And I did that, and I kind of sucked, and I knew I sucked, and I was given a ribbon for participating. And I remember being disgusted and littering it. And I made the conscious choice, and I knew that littering was wrong. And it was just such an, it was ethically wrong for that to have been given to me. And I knew it. And kids are very aware of how in the way they are. There's a kind of shyness, a kind of self-awareness that exists. And when participating in something, I knew when I wasn't as good as other people because I could see it, I could feel it. And it wasn't necessarily that I felt bad about myself, but it was self-judgment, and it wasn't harmful to me or anything like that. I didn't need to feel good about it. I never would have gone out there in the first place because I thought looking back at it, even at the time, I felt that this kind of forced nonsense was just the kind of play day that everybody would go out there to experience, was just to showcase how good or bad kids were at that. And so I think now that it's the wrong thing to do. And I presume that kind of thing isn't really done anymore, certainly not in the way that I had experienced it. Time's passed anyway, so things change. So that ribbon is something I keep in mind when I'm thinking about cheats in video games and the idea of success and the perception of success and the perception of participation. Because back in the day, games were actually hard. I mean, hard. And they were unforgiving. And partly that was because they were arcade games, and arcade games want to swallow your quarters. And so they made themselves, like the claw machines that are going for stuffed animals in the little box where you got the handle. They're just rigged. And the video games were like that too. Even when they started coming out for consoles and stuff like that, they maintained that incredible challenge. Sometimes because they were more or less a direct port from the arcade games, and that spilled into computer games. And cheat codes came out primarily in the DOS PC gaming stuff, but it exists kind of everywhere depending on how you know how to do things. And sometimes it's just cheesing, and that's kind of in the same realm. There's a kind of there's a kind of reward for playful hacking to figure out the system, the mechanics of a particular game in order to take advantage of things. And while that kind of abuse of the mechanics is itself kind of cheating, there is a sense of challenge and reward that exists that's legitimate in figuring that stuff out. So for example, I am perhaps the only person to figure out a way in the Nintendo game Battletoads to get essentially unlimited lives. I figured it out. A friend of mine and I implemented it. We learned, and it was a success. And we went through the game. And so it's obviously wrong. It's not using a cheat code, but it is abusing mechanics, and yet there's a sense of accomplishment. So there's something there where it's not a participation ribbon. It is something that required challenge, but it's not the same as being good enough at the game to just play the game and win. So there's something else that's there. I was meta playing in a sense, and I beat the game in a mechanics sense, but not in the actual gameplay sense. So there's still it's not exactly a hollow victory, but it's a kind of a victory. And so cheat codes in video games, the first real experience that I had that meant something was for the game Doom. And there was a cheat code, and the way I remember it was ID smashing pumpkins into small pieces of putrid debris. And you just type in the first character of all that mnemonic, which I still know all these years later, and it would give you like all the guns, and you can clip through walls and stuff like that. And I would do that to go and explore the maps. It was a very challenging game, and but that's not to win. That's to go exploring where I'm not really supposed to, and I would never go and win like that. There's just no. I mean, I won legitimately. It's not an insanely hard game until you crank up the difficulty level, and then it's just. I had a friend who could do it. I can't do it. I'm not that good. And I want to think in terms of what's happening these days in terms of the equivalent of a participation award for playing certain games which have content which used to be exclusive to a set of dedicated players, which is no longer exclusive. I'm thinking primarily of World of Warcraft's rating, although in a sense it probably exists in a lot of games now. I just haven't played the variety of games. And there's some arguments that have been out there that go from, well, all features of a game should be accessible to everybody. There should be an easy mode for every game, all the way down to some people who need specialized controls or they can't play at all. So the game can be made accessible to the disabled to varying degrees. And the argument as to whether or not that's cheating. Well, the short answer is, yeah, it's cheating because it's not using the mechanics of the game, the controls of the game where the game it was made to be played a certain way. But for games that are made to be played in a variety of ways where it doesn't necessarily matter how a player controls it. So for example, a tactics game, it doesn't matter if a person uses a joystick or a keyboard, it doesn't matter if they use foot pedals or a steering wheel. They just have to use their brain and make the decision. It's not a reflexes based thing. It's they get good because it's just the human that matters, not the body, not the interface. Anyhow, for something like World of Warcraft, there's endgame rating that got. It's not just the fact that an easy mode got put in, and there's a heroic mode and an easy mode, and then there's looking for raid, which is anybody presses a button, they get queued up. Sometimes it takes a half an hour, but they get in and they experience what I keep insisting on calling a playable cutscene, where they go and experience the end game. And it's very much like cheating. It's very much like they typed in the cheat code, they get queued up this thing, they get put into this easy scenario, they kind of get to play their character, they kind of have some mechanics, sort of. Other people are there to kind of carry them, and they never have to get good or qualify or understand what's going on enough. And they're just, hey, at the end of it, pat them on the head, here's a participation ribbon, here's a little piece of gear, good job, pinch them on the cheeks, pat them on the head kind of thing, and away they go. And how that's not going to grant a sense of accomplishment. I mean, I could in a sense argue that the people who have actually worked and who have actually played for the hard stuff would feel in a sense insulted that this easy mode stuff exists. And you can make an argument that, yeah, it's kind of this elitism where there are those players over there, but I understand the idea of developers spending a huge amount of development effort on that very end game stuff, and the sense of the absence of the full use of that development effort, because so few players get to see that content. But in fact, I found it as egging me on to improve, to go up there. So I guess the equivalent would be, imagine if it wasn't just a surprise event that I went out to that schoolyard thing. Like, do I call it a schoolyard? It's like huge field and stuff like that. And if there were time to prepare and I understood everything and I knew all the rules of all the games and and I went in there and I failed and I wasn't given any ribbons, and then it would happen like maybe later that season or maybe the next year, and it was just a yearly thing, and I would just get a little bit better, as opposed to it just happened once, everybody hated it. Well, the bottom 80% hated it. And that there's some kind of sense of accomplishment that exists there in it being hard and it being exclusive and me being able to work for it because I want it, and then me not needing to be encouraged because I'll do it myself. That comes across as so hollow coming from like a teacher. That's a parent thing. I don't think schools should have anything to do with the ever inevitable maturation of a child. I guess I can put it that way. And parents are a problem too, because parents don't participate enough anyway. So who knows how to do that anyway? So it ends up kind of being semi-socialized and far too much in the hands of schools and far too much in the hands of the individuals, and they'll just muddle through self-esteem and stuff like that. It's not a good experience, and I think humans have been stunted because we don't have involved childhoods by being raised primarily by extended family and family. Anyhow, so I think that when a player plugs in some codes, cheats, knows they're cheating, goes through the game, and experiences it, I don't think that is an authentic way to play a game, in that I think the existence of those cheat codes will actually take away from that player experiencing the full, I could say something like the fullness of accomplishment of playing a game. And I think that if it means that they never finish it, I think that's okay. And I think that's okay. And I think that there's going to be a lot of things in a person's life where they will not have success, because we are not the same as one another, and you are not good enough to be the best at probably at anything, certainly at most things. And for the goals that you set out in life, you've probably set out too many. You probably have too many dreams, which is okay, but realistically speaking, you're not going to accomplish all of them. And just like winning at any particular game, I don't think a person can chase after something like a game, and then I don't think it's reasonable for them to expect to just have it handed to them, because that doesn't happen anywhere else in life. They shouldn't be just given it. They shouldn't be given the ribbon. They shouldn't be given the cheat codes. They shouldn't see the end, because just like, in life, they would need to do the work and earn that. And I think that there will be a far larger sense of success, a growing experience for that person to actually want something, to sit down, to kind of rewire their brain, to specialize at being good at playing that game or doing that other action, have that hobby, that actual skill, that dream of some sort, that there's a sense of accomplishment that a person puts the other things that they admit are not as important, put those off in the background, and then just focuses on the thing that they want. That there is something far more enticing, engaging, far more correct, even ethical, about having an approach to life like that, and that in a, I can't say something like handouts, but that's kind of what a video game is doing when it has cheat codes of some sort, when it has the easy mode button, the whatever. It's handing stuff over to these people, playing pretend like they deserve to see the end game content. Well, they deserve to have things held back from them so that they can earn the reward of seeing more and more of the game and perhaps never seeing the end. And that they deserve that feeling of accomplishment. That's what they deserve. They don't deserve the rest of it. They perhaps should never see. How many games have any of us really finished? I've got a massive Steam library, a massive one, and I'm not even trying. There are people out there who've been trying. They've been buying stuff that's on sale. Just grab it up really quick. They've been getting stuff on sale on Steam. They've been participating in the Humble Bundle, easy stuff. Yeah, it's cheap. You get a handful of games, and they'll maybe pay the $15 a month for the Humble Bundle, where they give you like some AAA games. And so we're not going to finish all those games. So what would make somebody think they're special enough to be handed any one particular game and to expect to finish that game? When if you love something, you should go after it, and you won't always get it. You won't always win. But if you do get it, it should be because you worked hard, and that way you feel like you not exactly are entitled to it, but you feel like you earned it honestly, ethically. And that if stuff falls from the sky and is just handed to you, there's a kind of a sense of a hollow victory there. And games in life, I don't think a person would be healthy with all their successes in life just being hollow victories.